Hey, what's up, lightboltjoe here. Today we are going to discuss the 2009 compilation book, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Demigod Files by Rick Riordan. So this compilation is three short stories, some interviews with the campers from Camp Half-Blood, some fun facts about the gods and goddesses, stuff like that. This happens before the fifth book, The Last Olympian. So it's kind of like leading up to it, like what happens. So the first story is Percy Jackson and the Lost Chariot. Lost Chariot? Is that what it's called? Let me just double check. Stolen Chariot. I was close. Percy Jackson and the Stolen Chariot, Percy Jackson and the Bronze Dragon, and then Percy Jackson and the Sword of Hades. So Stolen Chariot is Clarice and Clarice LaRue, daughter of Ares, and Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, fighting against her twin immortal brothers who don't want her to take the dad's chariot because they're males and it's the male son right, not the daughter's right to, take the driving test, basically, of getting the chariot and driving it back, before the sun sets on this particular day, etc. So the fighting leads to the zoo on Staten Island, and it's very entertaining. It's very entertaining how the mist works. It's very entertaining how, quick the story progresses, where sworn enemies, Clarice and Percy, have to work together. He then helps her, and, they do a silent head nod of being friends at the end, kind of a thing. Very quick. The second film, Percy Jackson and the Bronze Dragon, is the origin story of how Festus the dragon, who we all know and love from the Heroes of Olympus books, fixed and helmed by Leo Valdez, of course, son of Hephaestus, how he came about within the camp, right? We know he was in the camp. We know he was outside of Camp Half-Blood, within Heroes of Olympus, but how did he get there? So we know that within this story, it starts out with a capture the flag game. Percy and Beckendorf, Charles Beckendorf, they're on the same team. Charles Beckendorf is the cabin leader of Hephaestus at this particular point. Again, this is prior to Last Olympian, and it just kills my soul knowing that Beck and Selena Beauregard both perish at the hands of the Titan Lord Kronos within the battling, before the actual war, during the actual war. Very sad. But it was nice having Beck, Percy, Annabeth, and Selena, the four of them together, having an adventure while the game of Capture the Flag was happening, within the outskirts of the woods of Camp Half-Blood, as it does all the time. And this takes place on the 4th of July because Beck is getting the nerve up to ask Selena out to go, watch the fireworks, and Percy's just starting to learn that he has feelings for Annabeth, so he's like, hey, maybe I should ask her as well. Little things. It's adorable. But the finding of the dragon, the Mirmeek ants, the gigantic, tank ants that spit acid, drag this bronze dragon head through the woods to their giant anthill, which Beck and Percy happen to stumble upon. And then it's a matter of Beck gets captured. Annabeth and Selena are on the same Capture the Flag team. They are then in the midst of capturing Percy, who says, no, we got to go save Beck. So then they go save Beck, and they reattach the head to the dragon, and the dragon then fights the ants, and it's a wonderful, very quick, fast-paced adventure, and it's fun as a prelude to Leo coming across Festus the dragon in the woods, because he's not called Festus at that primary moment. He's just called the Bronze Dragon. So very cool, very, very cool. Of the second story. And then the third story is super important, Percy Jackson and the Sword of Hades. So this was recommended, again, from our beloved Uncle Rick Riordan, who said we should read this particular short story prior to, I forgot how long this is, prior to The Sun and the Stars, when that comes out, the combo book, the co-written book from Mark, I forget their last name, and Rick Riordan. It's this sequel spin-off book where Nico D'Angelo and Will Solis are in the are in Tartarus or in Hades, doing adventures and stuff. For whatever reason they're down there. I don't actually know the plot, and I think that's fine. I don't know the plot as of yet. Sword of Hades was like 50-ish pages, give or take. So we know that there's the Titan Lord Ipius. I can't pronounce names today. We know he was in Tartarus, and we know he we know he's the brother of Kronos. We know he's the father of Atlas, right? So we know that he was in Tartarus, and we know that he bathed in the river Lethe because of Percy, and then Percy told him, "You're my friend Bob," and Bob the Titan, right? We know that origin story because Bob is a very big character within the House of Hades, which is the fourth book in the Heroes of Olympus series, which is the continuation of the Percy Jackson and the Olympus series, same universe of Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, same universe as the Red Pyramid, Kane Chronicles. Red Pyramid was the first thing. And then et cetera, right? So we get that this story is important because it's Persephone brings together Nico D'Angelo, Talia Grace, and Percy Jackson right before the events of Last Olympian. Persephone, there we go, had suggested to Hades to make a sword. That way he had enough power. He was on par with power as to Zeus and Poseidon. That way the big three were balanced in power, because technically it was just Zeus and Poseidon had more power than Hades. So then Persephone was suggesting that he make his own sword with the key to the underworld embedded in the hilts. That way he has more power. He has the same amount of power as them, right? Hades said no, that they would then take his power away, as they originally granted it to begin with. And so she wound up making his sword anyway with some smiths, with some forgers. And then it was stolen, so she takes the big three's offspring, Nico D'Angelo, Percy Jackson, and Talia Grace, throws them all together. They get transported through Central Park into the underworld, given this, it's not really a quest, it's just a, hey, do this or I'll kill you kind of a thing. And so the three of them are trying to figure out who took the sword, why is the sword taken if it's not finished yet, and what happens next, right? So they're tracking down clues. So they come across Sisyphus, who's rolling his boulder up and down the hill. They get information from him, describing a demigod with one eye and an eye patch. So that's obviously Ethan Nakamura, so the son of Nemesis. And so why isn't Ethan trying to take this sword? Well, obviously Ethan's working for Kronos at this point. So why? Why is the sword important if it's not finished? So Ethan and is still the head suspect. They come across Milione, who's the goddess of ghosts, messes with Talia's head, messes with Nico's head. They get attacked by some bat lady demons at one point, the Deimos at one point, and Percy is gnashed on the shoulder. He's poisoned. He's dying, and they only can give him so much ambrosia and nectar before he explodes into flames. So the river Lethe, L-I-T-H-E, Lethe, which I think is Lethe or Lethe, however you pronounce it. If you bask in it, if you bathe in it, you'll lose your memory. So we know that the river Styx has its own power. We know that each river in the underworld has their own power. The river Lethe can, wipe your memory clean. You'll start from scratch like a newborn baby. And then what happens next? So Percy is trying to help his friends cross this river to get to the other side, knowing that they have to get there because that's where the clues are leading. He eventually gets there, and because he's the son of Poseidon, he can control water in extent, depending on the water. Better with salt water, okay with river water, since fresh, if the river dyads will cooperate, as he explained. And then underworld water he's not really familiar with. So same principle where he can stay dry. He has a thin layer of air around him, so he's not touching the river Lethe, which is convenient, so he keeps his memory. So all of them get across. They then come face to face with Ethan. Ethan is with Iapetus, the Titan Lord, who's hell-bent on revenge. That's why he's helping Ethan, with the sword. That way he can, wreak havoc and etc., right? Be on Kronos' good side. So as the fighting continues, Percy then gets a hold of Iapetus, throws him in the Lethe, and then he comes back out, mind-wiped, and he says, hi, who am I? And then Percy says, you're Bob, you're my friend. And that's how it starts. That's where the Bob origin is. So then getting the sword back, Hades realizing that Persephone went against his will because she did create the sword, and then them all agreeing that, Percy making Hades agree to not use the sword against, swearing an oath to not use the sword against the other gods and goddesses. He did agree to it. So Hades disappears. Persephone is just doing her own thing after threatening them with their life again, gives them roses to then go back to the mortal realm. Nico decides to stay in the underworld with Bob, trying to find a place for Bob in the underworld, which we know he is given a janitor job. Many stories later within House of Hades, we know we get Bob again because Bob is helping Annabeth and Percy in Tartarus. So it's important seeing this because of the origin of Bob, because of the relationship that Nico and Percy are starting to develop slightly in regards to being friends. Still talking about the offer that he gave Percy at the end of the previous novel, or the two previous the previous novel, where Nico had a theory of how to give Percy more strength by bathing in the river Styx. Aside from feeling like he was burning of acid, he can, put that little pinpoint at the bottom of the base of his spine, small of the back as they call it, where his immortality will not be. That way he can actually fight and be the most powerful there ever was, right? So it's nice having that conversation because it's alluded to, in the future stories. It's nice seeing the origin of Bob because it's alluded to. It's discussed, but it's not in-depthly. We don't get the full story, in the future. So this story is super important, and going forward, with Talia and Percy, working together as the story progresses as well, very important. Talia then continuing on to the Trials of Apollo book series. There's so many books in this multiverse of Rick Riordan books and Rick Riordan Presents books. It's very important to see certain aspects. So Percy Jackson and the Bronze Dragon, super important seeing for stories moving forward. Percy Jackson, I should have just said Peter Johnson at this point. Peter Johnson and the Sword of Hades, super important for stories moving forward. And this compilation came out in 2009. The story was written even before that. So to have something from 2009 be directly pivotal to a story that comes out in 2023, that is a massive time difference. Massive that it's still relevant all these years later, all these decades and a half later, that it's still important to go back to see what's the continuation of this story, what's the continuation of these multiverse of stories. So, bro, epic. Rick is just an incredible storyteller. He's an incredible visionary. He's an incredible person in general. So it's wonderful to revisit these stories that I haven't read in well over a decade. So Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Demigod Files by Rick Riordan in 2009. Incredible compilation book. I'm very glad I reread this. It brought back some love and admiration for Percy, for the characters, which I've been boasting about for decades anyway, but here we are. Back at the, not so beginning, but back in the original series. Can't wait for the show to come out. Can't wait for the two Percy books we get this year. The Sun and the Stars, I think, comes out in May, and then we get Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods, which is the 6th Percy Jackson book, technically, which comes out in like September, October. Can't wait. It's going to be awesome. On to the next review. Mucho mahalo.